The courtroom was shaped like a crescent fong, curved upward into the darkness of a high tribunal ship Vindexum. Columns pulsed with sickly green light, and the walls wept with condensation from the cold void outside. Annabelle Creed stood in the center, knees cut, lips split, hands bound in iron cuffs that hummed faintly like a lullaby gone wrong. Her boots were missing, left in some interrogation cell 2 decks below, and the skin on her left arm bore plasma burns where the Empire had tried to extract something more useful than silence. The high strategon Velzir regarded her from his lofty perch, 6 golden eyes blinking in slow rotations. His voice crawled through the chamber like oil across stone. Human, your name is irrelevant. Your purpose obsolete. Yet here you are, on charges of smuggling seditious materials into Sector 49 and weaponizing folklore. The alien jury, a slithering gallery of species with mandibles, feathers, and gills, let out a rustle of amusement. Annabelle lifted her chin, bruised though it was, and smiled. You call it folklore. We call it family business. Velzir sneered. Your family includes documents titled 1776, references to an entity called Mom's Chili, and, he paused, sniffing the parchment with something resembling distaste. Baseball metaphors as moral allegory. Another wave of chuckles. Annabelle took a breath. Her voice came cracked, low. You'll regret aiming for the heart. Should have gone for the soul. That silenced them briefly. The room buzzed with confusion. Some tapped at their translators, assuming malfunction. Velzir waved a hand. Enough riddles. You are unarmed, unremarkable. Your planet is unremarkable, and your death will be unremarkable. The sentence was not shouted. It was folded into silence. 7 soldiers stepped forward, weapons like metal vipers coiled in their arms. Annabelle didn't flinch. She reached up slowly, brushed her hair back with her cuffed hands, and whispered something. The translator drones didn't catch it. 7 blue beams tore through her chest. She fell backward. No cry, no struggle, just a thud that echoed too long. Her blood pooled like spilled ink on the tribunal's polished floor. Her eyes, still open, reflected the distant glint of stars. None of the aliens bothered to watch her die. Most had already turned to their devices or exited the chamber. Velzir simply pressed a claw to his console. Cleanse the body. Send it to the incineration chamber. A janitorial drone hovered in with indifference, dragging her limbs by the wrist, as if she were a broken crate. And then the ship moved on. 7 hours passed. At 0700 Galactic Standard, something shifted near Cargo Bay 4. The lights flickered once, twice. Cameras failed in sequence like falling dominoes. A minor systems glitch, they assumed, until Sector D's oxygen cycling rebooted by itself, and 7 security officers didn't report in. At 0710, the outpost's mainframe received a garbled transmission, static crackle, a deep voice humming a tune without words. The pattern resembled no known encryption. At 0723, a long shadow stepped into hallway B. A lanky, insectoid guard squinted at the monitor. What is that? The silhouette paused under a faulty, flickering light. He was tall, human tall, but broader than most. A duffel bag hung off one shoulder. His walk was unhurried, like he'd strolled into a bar 5 minutes before closing time and hadn't yet decided whether to raise hell or ask for whiskey. And then he looked up, straight into the camera, and he smiled. The guard recoiled. He's not supposed to smile. They don't smile when they come back. Another guard leaned over. Wait, who is that? The camera blinked once more. The feed vanished. Down in the halls, the shadow moved forward. No alarms. No klaxons. Just the sound of his boots on metal, steady as a grandfather clock left ticking in the ruins of a church. He passed a holographic welcome sign. Proud stronghold of the Empire. All species welcome. He paused, considered it, then muttered, well, ain't that sweet? He walked through it, and the projection fizzled out. At 0730, a cafeteria worker named Junal entered the supply corridor and screamed. The footage later showed her slipping on something slick and red, alien blood, thick and tar-like. What she thought she saw, was a man in a faded brown coat calmly wrapping an unconscious gunnery officer in duct tape, humming a low tune from an ancient human playlist labeled Dad's Road Trip, Volume 1. By 0740, whispers had started. The ghost. The reckoning. The American. No one knew his name yet, but the rumors bloomed in the dark like fungus. He'd come with no weapons, just a duffel bag and a photograph. At 0800, Stratagon Velzir received word that a human intruder had breached 5 security doors using no code, no clearance, no assistance. Just willpower. He didn't panic. He merely raised one glistening brow ridge, put a plasma round through his heart. The soldier hesitated. Sir, we already did. This morning. To his daughter. Velzir leaned back. So this is retaliatory. Sput, a young communications analyst, sat nearby. He had green skin and an aversion to war. He'd studied Earth's culture out of fascination, not obligation. Something in his stomach sank. It's not retaliation, he whispered. Velzir turned. Speak up, Lieutenant. Sput looked pale. It's invocation. What do you mean? But Sput wouldn't answer. He only looked back at the blinking red dot on the corridor feed where the man was now sitting, casually sipping from a metal thermos. Every time someone passed by, he smiled and said, Morning. At 0821, an intercom clicked on in Sector 12. No one authorized it. The voice came through dusty and slow, like an old phonograph unearthed in a ruined museum. Now I know y'all are confused. You think you shot a human girl, and that was the end of it. And maybe, just maybe it would have been, if she'd been anyone else. Sput froze. That voice. It didn't shout. It offered. She was my daughter. Name's Annabelle. Played piano. Loved chili dogs and arm wrestling. And she had this nasty little habit of speaking her mind. A long pause. Then, now here's the thing. I ain't mad. Not the way you think. I'm just disappointed. Across the station, hundreds of aliens sat frozen, some with fingers on triggers, some clutching children, all listening. I taught her the rules. Don't draw unless you mean it. Don't strike unless you're ready to finish it. And never, ever walk into a place uninvited. A beat. But y'all invited us. When you aimed 7 times at her heart, you rang a dinner bell. And darlin', I showed up hungry. Then silence. At 0830, the emergency lockdown engaged. Too late. The cameras in every armory went dead. The elevators stopped. The auto defense turrets reoriented, pointed inward. Velzir finally stood, cloak rustling. Enough. Send the elites. I want his body incinerated and his name erased. Sput whispered again. He doesn't want to be remembered. What? He wants to be understood. The Stratagon snarled. Understood as what? A father. Sput stared into the flickering feed, where the man now stood before a mural of galactic victory. He was setting something down, dog tags. No, Sput murmured. As a consequence. At 0900, the central hangar bay door opened without command. No ships. No forces. Just wind and dust. A whisper in the metal. And him. He stood alone, cape fluttering slightly. No armor. No troops. Just that duffel and the weight of memory. A technician, barely past larval stage, peeked out from behind a pillar and whispered, Who is he? And someone else, older, grayer, replied with shaking breath. They called him the Boogeyman back on Earth. A bedtime story made of grit and God and unfinished business. The child asked, Is he real? And the reply came soft and final. Now he is. Then the feed cut to black, and across the empire, 1,000 stars blinked red. The elevator chimed politely as it opened, as if unaware that 12 alien bodies lay slumped 2 corridors behind it. Grant Creed stepped out, his boots clicking once on the polished floor before sinking into silence. He carried no weapon, only a duffel bag in one hand and a thermos in the other. His coat, long and worn, flared gently with his stride like an old American flag flapping in forgotten wind. On his back was stitched a patch, United States Marine Corps, retired. The word retired looked like it had been stitched by someone who didn't believe in it. A cleaning drone veered away instinctively. The security wing of Vindexum Station had been designed for intimidation. Sharp walls, high ceilings, reinforced blast doors with biolocks, and surveillance drones watching from every vent. It was designed for prisoners, not for men like Grant. Not for fathers with murder in their bones and love written across every scar. He passed a line of alien guards lining the corridor ahead. Amphibians, quadrupeds, spine things with razors for knuckles. Each held a weapon trained directly on him. Their eyes flickered, confused. He wasn't running, wasn't even sweating. The lead guard, a four-armed warhound with tusks and breathing tubes, barked, "You will cease movement. You are in violation of Galactic code." Grant unscrewed the lid of his thermos, took a long sip, and nodded toward the group. "Coffee." The entire formation paused. "What?" I said. "Y'all want some?" "Strong brew. Real earthy. Black as midnight without a moon." The warhound blinked. "You offered drink in a combat corridor?" Grant held out the thermos. "Manners matter, even at war." No one moved. Then one of the younger guards, a nervous beetle type barely out of pupa, stepped forward. "I will taste this coffee. I have heard legends." He took the thermos, sniffed cautiously, then sipped, and immediately gagged. "By the black suns, this is bitter. It tastes like regret and burnt earth." Grant nodded solemnly. "Exactly." He took the thermos back, sipped again, then exhaled softly through his nose. "First cup I had was in Fallujah. My commanding officer made it with radiator water and hope." The guard said nothing. "Now," Grant continued, adjusting the duffel strap, "I'm looking for the room where y'all executed my daughter. Thought I'd leave a thank you note. Real heartfelt. Maybe a gift basket." Weapons raised in unison. "Stand down," barked the warhound. But Grant had already moved. He stepped forward, not quickly, not with panic, but with a precision so measured it was terrifying. In one motion, he twisted the thermos cap, flung scalding coffee into the first guard's face, and drove the steel container into his throat. The thud was wet. Before the others registered what had happened, Grant rolled low, swept the beetle's legs, caught the weapon mid-fall, and fired a single round into the air conditioning unit overhead. The corridor erupted in steam and sparks. Blinded, the guards fired wildly, blasting each other in panic. Grant moved through the fog like a myth, silent, effective, grim. He didn't kill all of them. He marked them, duct-taped hands to knees, broke ribs without cracking skulls, made sure they remembered. When the mist cleared, Grant was the only one standing. The young beetle, quivering, blinked from his taped-up perch. You could have killed us." "I could have," Grant agreed. "But fear that ends in death don't last. Fear that lives, that clings to you in dark rooms, when you're staring at your own reflection. That's what changes men." He tipped his head once, then stepped over the warhound's unconscious body and continued toward the tribunal core. Back in the command chamber, Stratagon Velzir watched in silence. No fury, just a slow narrowing of all 6 eyes. He tapped a claw on his data panel and turned to his second. "This human does not behave as expected." "No, Stratagon. He exhibits courtesy, even during engagement." "Yes, Stratagon. And he fights like a scalpel, not a sword." "Yes, Stratagon." Velzir paused. "Find his designation." The panel lit up with data. Colonel Grant Creed, United States Marine Corps, stationed Earth Sector, discharged with honors after the siege of Triton 5. Widowed. 1 daughter, deceased. Sput stood off to the side, fidgeting. He was not part of the elite command, merely a junior systems analyst. But he'd read the dossiers, studied Terran behaviors. There was a phrase he kept circling in his mind, something he'd once read from human literature. "Beware the quiet man." He raised a hand. "Permission to speak, Stratagon." Velzir turned mildly amused. "Let the janitor speak." "I believe," Sput began, hesitant, "I believe he's not here for revenge." "Not exactly." Velzir chuckled. "Then what?" "An emotional exhibition." Sput hesitated. He's here to correct something. Velzier narrowed his eyes. Correct. Sir, Terrans don't forget. They bury. And when something unburies itself, when a man like that walks this far into the lion's mouth without a single shot fired, he's not aiming at pride. He's targeting the structure. Velzier waved him off. Send the infiltrator units. If he wishes to correct something, correct him. Down below, Grant paused before a vault door the size of a house. He reached into his coat and pulled out a dog tag, holding it between thumb and forefinger. For a moment, the war fell away. His fingers trembled. Hey, kiddo, he whispered. The metal was warm from his skin. I know you're gone, but I need you to stay close now, just a while longer. He kissed the tag and tucked it back into his chest pocket. Behind him, a vent hissed open. The infiltrators came like ghosts, sleepless machines built for war in silent places. 3 hovered down the corridor, refracting light off their cloaking panels. They had no voice, no face, only function. Grant didn't flinch. He dropped the duffel, unzipped it, pulled out a baseball bat. Aluminum, dented. Signed by someone named Uncle Billy. Let's see if y'all bleed, he muttered. The machines charged. The bat cracked skull and chassis, sparked metal, ripped fiber. One drone flailed and erupted in an arc of electricity. Another managed a glancing strike to Grant's ribs. He grunted, stumbled, then pivoted and drove the bat clean through the third's neck joint. When it was over, he stood bleeding, panting softly, leaning on the bat like a cane. He turned to the nearest security camera and said, 3 down. Might want to send more. Or better. The feed cut out. Back in the command chamber, Velzier watched with a blank expression. Then he turned slowly to Sput. You were right. Sput swallowed hard. This isn't about grief. No, Stratagon. Velzier rose, his cloak dragging across the floor like dying fire. It's about narrative. Sput blinked. Sir. He's rewriting our story, with fists and irony. Sput whispered, that's what they do. Velzier clicked his mandibles. Get me the war archives. Every conflict Earth has engaged in. Every one. Sput nodded shakily, then paused. Sir, what if this isn't just him? Velzier froze. Sput stepped closer, voice barely above a breath. What if this is step 1? Outside, Grant stood in the tribunal's hall of banners. He looked up at the flags of alien conquest, each embroidered with years and victories, fluttering in recycled air. He reached up and tore down the banner of the Empire, folded it, set it on the floor. Then from his coat, he pulled out something new. A red, white, and blue scrap, tattered, weathered, but unmistakable. He pinned it to the wall, just below a blinking surveillance light. A small American flag. He didn't smile, just stared at it for a moment and whispered. She carried one in her boot. Y'all never noticed. From the corridor, behind him came the soft clatter of boots. More troops inbound. Grant turned toward the sound, rolled his neck once, then grabbed the bat again. You wanted to see what humans carry when they're empty-handed, he muttered. You're about to. And then, calm as a hymn sung through gritted teeth, he walked into the next ambush. The room was quiet in a way only war leaves behind, like the hush after the last hymn fades in a church someone burned. Broken weapons lay like snapped bones. A plasma rifle hissed steam in the corner. Blood, both red and not, streaked the floor in patterns that told a brutal, efficient story. 15 attackers, 0 survivors, and a man who hadn't started breathing hard until the last one hit the floor. Grant Creed exhaled slowly, set down the bat, and knelt beside a steel crate pushed into the corner. His knuckles were bruised. The front of his coat bore alien gore in dark streaks, but his hands trembled only when he pulled out the small chain of tags. He thumbed the edge of the first, Annabelle Creed. USMC 03. Blood type O+. No religion. He stared at the last line. No religion, he muttered, half to himself. Funny thing for a girl who prayed before every operation. There was a smear on the edge, plasma burnt. He closed his eyes. The scent of cherry shampoo hit him like a landmine. In the distance, something exploded. Not close enough to matter. Not anymore. The alarms had given up. Either the system was fried, or the station had accepted its fate. It had, perhaps, realized that it was no longer a ship. It was a tomb under slow construction. From the far end of the hall, a voice echoed. She knew what she was walking into. Grant didn't stand. He didn't even turn around. He knew that voice. "Young man," he said, "you got a name?" "Sput," the alien said quietly. "Systems analyst. I was there when they passed the sentence. I watched her bleed." Grant nodded once. "I figured someone with a soul must have been in that room." Sput stepped into the light. He looked out of place, small, green-skinned, lanky, a translator coil blinking softly at his throat. He wasn't armed. "She didn't beg," Sput whispered. "She never looked afraid." "She wouldn't," Grant said. "She'd been training for death since 12. Made me teach her pressure wounds using pig carcasses. Said if her time ever came, she wanted it to count." Sput approached carefully. It did. Grant turned now. His eyes were steel, but not cruel. Just ancient. Like he'd lived 5 wars for every year. "She was the match," Grant said. Sput frowned. "Match?" Grant stood slowly. "You don't get it. You think she came here to smuggle intel? Maybe stir rebellion?" That was the official charge. Grant smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She came here to die, son." Sput staggered. "What?" "She volunteered. Whole damn thing was planned. Not by me. By her." Sput's skin paled. "You mean she wanted this?" "She knew what her death would buy. Empire doesn't fear soldiers. Y'all got soldiers. What you don't have is sacrifice. You don't understand the weapon that bleeds and chooses to." The alien sat down heavily on a crate. "Then what are you?" Grant tilted his head. "I'm the apology." Sput blinked. "For what?" Grant looked down at his hands. "For the bones it takes to build peace. For the fury it takes to remind tyrants that kindness ain't weakness." He crossed the room and opened the center panel of the main power grid. The wires inside had already been sliced. "She fried your comms," he said, "right before they shot her. Empire's been talking to static ever since." Sput stared. "Why would she?" "To give Earth time." Sput stood. "Time to what?" Grant reached into his coat and withdrew a drive. Thin. Silver. Engraved with a single word, redline. He inserted it into the port. Lights flared. Screens snapped awake across the room. Ancient human satellites, long thought defunct, lit up in distant sectors. The Empire's encryption keys began vanishing slowly, silently, like cities beneath rising tides. "She was the flare," Grant said softly. "This is the storm." In orbit, cloaked human dreadnoughts adjusted trajectories. Ships that hadn't shown movement in years powered up in cold silence. Across the outer colonies, humans who'd been playing dumb, farmers, traders, drunks, put down their cover jobs and picked up old weapons that remembered names. A war years in the making had just come off pause. Sput's jaw trembled. We always thought humans were scattered, disorganized, always fighting among yourselves." Grant chuckled, low and dry. "That's just theater. When it matters, we stop bickering and start burying." Velzier's voice shattered the moment. It echoed through every speaker, every corner, rattling dust from the ceiling tiles. "Grant Creed," it drawled, with exaggerated patience. "You believe this changes the tide. But your little daughter's stunt bought you nothing but myth. You're alone." Grant stepped to the nearest panel and pressed the response button. "No Stratagon," he said calmly. "I'm history." Static crackled. Velzier continued, a touch more tense. "You're one man, one ship, one name." Grant looked at Sput. "Turn around." "What?" Grant pointed. On the far wall, an old projector had activated. Grainy footage. Earth soldiers, face-painted, running drills. Helicopters. Artillery. Marching bands. Children waving flags. Mothers holding folded triangles of cloth. Everything flickering. Faint music. A distant rendition. A battle hymn of the Republic. Sput stared, heart thudding. "We're not one name," Grant said. "We're 10,000. All waiting. All listening. You don't understand humans, Velzier. You studied our biology, our politics, our heat maps." He leaned forward. but you never studied our grief. The room trembled faintly as something vast entered the system. A shadow passed over the station. Somewhere, klaxons tried to whimper but died instead. "What is that?" Sput whispered. Grant didn't smile, didn't gloat. "Justice," he said. In the command chamber, Velzier's aides scrambled to adjust defense grids. Nothing responded. All coordinates looped. Passwords invalid. Whole fleets pinged back, no command source found. Earth hadn't jammed the system. They owned it. Every inch. Every line of code. Velzier roared, "They're inside our mainframe." And then screens all across the ship flickered, showing not threats, not soldiers, not warships. Just faces. Human faces. Some young, some old. Some weeping. Some staring with eyes that had seen too much. None spoke. Grant's voice echoed across the chambers again. "We don't broadcast rage. We show it." Then the feed cut. "Everywhere." Sput whispered, "You were baiting them." "I was," Grant admitted. "For what?" Grant turned, eyes dark and calm. "For something they forgot existed." Sput stepped closer. "Witches?" Grant looked up as the ceiling rumbled. An Earth warship uncloaking directly above them. Black, angular, silent as a confession. Consequence. The lights failed. All systems down. Silence again. And then, a voice, not from Grant, not from Sput. From deep within the station. Soft. Female. A pre-recorded message, triggered from Annabelle's tag. "If you're hearing this, congratulations. You poked the bear. And now you'll get to meet the man who taught me how to growl." It ended with a soft chuckle. Her voice. Grant closed his eyes. Sput stood frozen. And then Grant said, "We're not done yet." Because the power wasn't just cut. It had shifted. Velzier stood in the shattered center of Command Chamber Delta, clutching the edge of the console, as if it might explain the impossible. The great galactic map, a hologram that usually pulsed with vibrant life and empire control, now displayed a flickering patchwork of red anomalies. One by one, sectors were blinking into silence, like candles crushed by wind. The strategist's mandibles clenched. Across every outpost, human-coded sabotage bloomed in sequence, quiet as betrayal, fatal as mercy denied. "They were already in," he whispered, more to himself than to the frightened officers around him. They were already inside. From the shadows of the chamber, a gentle voice interrupted, slicing through the cold panic like velvet over razors. "You built this empire on the illusion of control, Stratagon." Grant Creed stepped forward, stepping over the wreckage of a shattered command drone. His coat was torn. Smoke streaked his face. Blood, alien and human, spattered his boots. He walked with that terrifying stillness that only came from a man who had nothing left to prove. Velzier turned slowly. "You." Grant nodded. "Me. I should have burned your planet to ash." "You tried," Grant said. "Didn't stick." Velzier's claws twitched. "We eradicated your ships. We traced your networks. We censored your cultures." Grant's voice was gentle now, like a grandfather explaining why wolves don't play fetch. "And we let you. Because sometimes the worst thing you can do to a predator is make him wait." Velzier barked a command. Nothing responded. No reinforcements. No lights. No data streams. The station had gone hollow. "You don't understand," he snarled. "This empire stood for 2,000 years. Built on compliance," Grant interrupted. "Built on the assumption that courage was rare. You misunderstood Earth. You saw our chaos. You never noticed the pattern underneath." Sput emerged behind Grant, shoulders tense, eyes wide. "He's right," the young analyst said softly. "You never studied their memory." Velzier growled, "Why would we study folklore?" "Because folklore," Sput whispered, "is how humans tell the truth before they have the power to prove it." The Stratagon's jaw clamped tight. From behind him, the great view screen came alive, an unauthorized feed. A patch of open stars. Then a warship. Just one. Black as regret. Sharp as judgment. It bore no insignia. Only a painted phrase across the hull. "We remember." Velzier's translators chirped in confusion. What is we remember?" Grant's voice came low and steady. It means you're out of time. From the warship's undercarriage, thousands of metallic canisters fired in silence, lightless missiles carrying no explosive payload, just electromagnetic pulse. They arced like falling stars, and when they hit the Empire's satellite grid, everything went dark. Communications, surveillance, even their planetary currencies. The galaxy blinked, and Earth's signal came roaring through. All across the stars, outlawed human radio frequencies returned. Old jazz, gospel, static-laced monologues about hope and rain. Then a voice. Annabelle's. If you're hearing this, it means I did my job. Her voice wasn't triumphant. It was calm, measured, the tone of someone who loved too hard to die small. My name is Annabelle Creed, daughter of Grant, student of war, volunteer. Stratagon Velzir froze, hands hovering over his console. I was never a rebel, she continued. I was a reminder. The screen flicked to her face, recorded in a quiet room, weeks before her death. She wore a standard Marine shirt. Her left arm bore an old tattoo, Semper Fi. The Empire told you we were weak, fractured, primitive. You believed it. She looked directly into the camera. And now, you get to meet the part of us we don't put in the brochures. The video cut. Then came fire. From hyperspace, human ships decloaked by the hundreds. They bore no national flags, no planetary symbols, just names painted by hand across steel hulls. Gettysburg, Twin Towers, Rosewood, Fallujah, Oklahoma, Selma, Wounded Knee. Names that burned, names that bled. Each one bore a different pain, but together they meant only one thing. Memory weaponized. In the command chamber, Velzir turned, panic now clear. You planned this. Grant didn't smile. We lived this. Velzir bared his teeth. You destroy everything over a symbol, over a dead girl. Grant stepped closer. No, he said. Over what she stood for. From his pocket, he pulled out something small, frayed, folded. He unfolded it gently, hands reverent. A tiny American flag. It wasn't new. The red had faded to rust. The white had browned along the edges. The blue bore the weight of decades. She carried this, he said, in her boot. He pinned it to the wall behind him, where the Empire's banners had once hung. She said it reminded her that the sky didn't belong to tyrants. Velzir spat. Cloth. That's all it is. Grant looked at the flag, then back at the alien. She believed it wasn't, he said. And that belief, that's the part you should have feared. The Stratagon lunged. Grant moved like a song written in gunpowder. He didn't flinch. He struck once, open palm, straight to the throat. Velzir crashed backward, gasping, limbs twitching. Grant stood over him. Wars ain't won by numbers, he said. They're won by people who can't be untaught. Velzir gagged, clawing at the air. You'll burn everything. No, Grant said, stepping back. We'll light the way. Burning's just how it starts. He turned to Sput. Tell the others. Sput nodded. He'd seen enough. The Empire had ruled through silence. Earth answered with voice. Across the system, messages played. To the enslaved. To the silenced. To the scattered and forgotten. You are not alone. Old Earth veterans came out of exile. Smugglers flipped allegiances. Colonies long assumed loyal suddenly lit human bonfires into the sky. In Sector 8, a mining colony destroyed its own control tower, using scraps of human poetry as code. In Sector 31, children held up crude flags made from dyed bedsheets. Across space, the myth of the Boogeyman spread, not as a monster, but as a mirror. A reminder of what happens when humanity stops apologizing for its teeth. Sput stood at the comms deck, broadcasting. You said we didn't belong in the stars, he told the galaxy. But humans? They never asked. They just kept climbing. From the ruins of the command chamber, Grant retrieved the tags one last time. He pressed them to his chest. I'm sorry, he whispered. It took me too long to come. But the whisper that followed wasn't his. It was hers. A pre-recorded echo from the tag, triggered by warmth. You came, Daddy, it said. That's all that mattered. He closed his eyes. A tear slipped down the blood on his cheek. Not for loss, for arrival. Behind him, the American flag fluttered, not from wind, but from the rising heat of change. And far above, stars began blinking in a new pattern. Not for war, for remembrance. But even as victory sang in subtle waves, Sput turned to Grant. What now? Grant looked out the viewport, into the void Earth had just reclaimed. We rebuild, he said. And we remind them. Remind them of what? Grant didn't look away. That the flag, he said, voice barely above a breath, was never just cloth. And somewhere on a cold world where hope had long slept, a child picked up a fallen patch of red, white, and blue. She held it to her chest and felt brave.